purpose of this PowerPoint is to provide an awareness of what the grade test assesses, how it is structured, and how to interpret the reports to determine next steps. The Keystones to Opportunities team is strongly encouraging principals and teachers to view and listen to this PowerPoint to provide a deeper understanding of the reports and prevent any misconceptions and misinterpretations. A professional development opportunity will be provided Friday, October 26th from 12 till 3 p.m. for administrators and teachers at Greenway to receive a more in-depth training that will cover reading, interpreting, and using the results. This is just a reminder that the grade assessment is administered to grades 3 through 6 and 9 through 11. It is a diagnostic assessment given on grade level, not instructional level. By using quantitative data from the grade, we can make qualitative instructional decisions on how to improve. The purpose of this training is to provide an overview of the subtests within the grade assessment in order to have a better understanding of how to interpret the reports and the data. Common subtests administered across all levels include vocabulary, listening comprehension, sentence comprehension, and passage comprehension. In third grade only, word reading is administered separately, but is included in the vocabulary composite score. All information from this PowerPoint has been taken from the technical manual, which every building received with their grade shipment. For the vocabulary subtest, the students read a phrase or short sentence in which one of the words was printed in bold type, the target word, and then pick the meaning of that word from a list of 4 or 5 choices. Vocabulary items were designed to measure a student's vocabulary knowledge without the benefit of contextual clues. The error analysis for the vocabulary subtest is based on dividing the target words by part of speech. This form of error analysis was chosen because the ability to automatically recall words can be influenced by the word's level of abstraction. For example, nouns and verbs are easier to learn and recall because their meanings are more apparent or concrete than function words such as prepositions. The grade vocabulary subtest was specifically designed to measure vocabulary at a higher stage or phase by not providing contextual clues in the item stem. By examining all error choices, a pattern may emerge that may help explain a student's problem with vocabulary. Students may have more difficulty with certain syntactic forms than others. For example, verbs are a class of words that show action or state of being. Recognizing the correct response choices for a verb target word would involve the understanding of the action or state of being that is demonstrated or illustrated by that word. Commonality by structure is most evident with adverbs. Many adverbs have ly endings. Readers who have been taught to recognize this inflectional ending have both information to assist decoding and a linguistic cue to the meaning. Word reading is included in Forms A and B of Level 3. For each item in the word reading subtest, the teacher reads a target word, next reads a sentence that contains the word, and then repeats the word. The student picks the target word from the list of 4 or 5 choices. At Level 3, the raw score can be added to the raw score from the vocabulary subtest to get the vocabulary composite standard scores. Word reading items were designed to measure a student's ability to decode phonetically regular words and to recognize common sight words. Each sentence comprehension item includes a single sentence with a missing word represented by a blank. 4 or 5 single word choices are then listed, which comprise 3 or 4 possible distractors and 1 clearly correct answer. Sentence comprehension items require the student to determine the single word that is missing from a sentence based on context, vocabulary knowledge, part of speech of the missing word, and complexity of the sentence structure. The purpose of this item test of this item type is to identify if the student can comprehend a sentence as a whole thought or unit. The items for the subtest were written to include a variety of parts of speech represented by the missing word and a variety of sentence types or structures. The complexity of the sentence structure is directly related to the difficulty of the subtest items. In other words, the ability to comprehend the sentence and select the appropriate missing word is greatly influenced by the linguistic structure of the sentence. Therefore, lower grade levels include more items that use simple sentence, and upper levels include more complex sentence structures. Sentence structures used in all levels of the grade assessment include simple sentence, compound sentence, complex sentence, and complicated sentence. You can refer to the grade technical manual on page 40 for the criteria that was carefully followed for sentence comprehension items. Interpreting results of the sentence comprehension subtest, you will find that a strong performance would indicate that the student can read and comprehend a sentence as a whole thought, regardless of the part of speech of the missing word or the complexity of the sentence structure. A strong performance on this subtest would also indicate that the student has good vocabulary and language skills to do the task. Interpretation of a weak performance on this subtest can be approached in several different ways. An error analysis by type should look for a pattern of errors with specific grammatical structures. Example, were more errors made when the missing word was of one grammatical form than another, such as more errors with verbs than nouns? An item-by-item error analysis should also address the type of sentence structure that was used in the incorrect items. Example, did the student have more difficulty with items that use a complex sentence or with simple sentences? Does the student seem to have more difficulty when the linguistic structure of the sentence becomes denser and less straightforward? Response choices also provide a method of interpretation. By observing the distractor, the student selects when an error. The teacher can formulate some hypotheses about the nature of the comprehension problems. When comparing vocabulary subtest with the sentence comprehension subtests, you could indicate if context is being used to derive meaning of unknown words, since sentence comprehension items include contextual clues and word meaning or vocabulary items do not. Poor readers may actually do better on the sentence comprehension subtest because of an overdependence on context to validate meaning. A poor performance on vocabulary and sentence comprehension might indicate both poor vocabulary knowledge and the lack of a strategy to learn new vocabulary from context. Moving on to passage comprehension. Passage comprehension requires a student to read a passage of one or more paragraphs and to answer 3, 4, or 5 multiple choice questions about the passage. The purpose of this subtest is to measure a student's comprehension reading skills with an extended passage consisting of a single paragraph or one with multiple paragraphs. The blueprint for this subtest specified a plan both for the passages included at each grade level and for the items written to go with each passage. For example, passage origin. This plan called for the inclusion of both authentic and synthetic passages and of passages of different types and lengths. Remember, an authentic passage is an excerpt from a piece of published literature. Synthetic passages are those written specifically for the test content and are not part of the world of published literature. The length of the passages was varied to provide information about how a student comprehends print material. Some students can extract and process information from a short reading better than from an extended reading. Some do better in opposite situations. Passage length was classified as short, medium, or long. The accompanying questions on each passage had to be written according to 4 designated metacognitive strategies associated with the educational objectives identified by Bloom's taxonomy of levels of learning. Passage comprehension items focus on the student using 4 different metacognitive strategies: questioning, clarifying, summarizing, and predicting for comprehending the print material. This scheme for writing comprehension questions was selected for the grade because it lends itself to direct teaching of comprehension strategies. The different types or topics used for grade passages were fiction, science, history, poem, fable, biography, and practical. The type or topic of passages included in each form at each level was varied for 2 reasons. 1, to help hold students' interest while taking the subtest, and 2, to provide additional information about comprehension skills. When interpreting passage comprehension results, a strong performance on this subtest would indicate that the student can read and comprehend a variety of material of different origins, topics or genres, and lengths, that the student is successfully applying various strategies to the comprehension of written materials, and that the reader is aware of and does apply comprehension strategies. Interpretation of a weak performance on this subtest can be approached in several different ways. A weak performance may be attributable to the specific material or passage. Look for passages by origin, topic, or length in which the student missed all or most of the questions. Did the length of the passage have an effect on the student's ability to successfully respond to the questions? A weak performance would indicate that the reader may not be aware of comprehension strategies or may not be using them. An analysis of item type can be key to both understanding why the student had difficulty with the subtest and knowing how to help the student. A poor performance on passage comprehension may be due to lack of word reading and vocabulary skills. The student may just not have the ability to read and understand the meaning of enough words to allow him or her to comprehend extended material. Comparison of performance on sentence comprehension and passage comprehension can provide information on how a student approaches the task of reading. Many students will do much better on sentence comprehension than passage comprehension. They view the task of single sentence comprehension as somehow different or less challenging than the task of comprehending words. They may be intimidated by the length of the passage and not attempt to make a best effort on an extended reading. But when faced with the simplicity of the single sentence task of sentence comprehension, they demonstrate fairly competent reading performance. Such students may need some confidence building as well as skill building work. A poor performance may also be due to a fluency problem. Listening comprehension. For each listening comprehension item, the teacher reads a sentence aloud to the class. The students are to mark one of 4 pictures that best goes with what was read by the teacher. The purpose of this subtest is to measure linguistic comprehension without printed cues. The item types are separated into 5 different categories: vocabulary, which is understanding of basic concept words; grammar, focusing on an understanding of structural aspects of language such as word order, clauses, verb tense, and subordination; inference, idiom, and non-literal, reading between the lines. Grammar item types are included more frequently than the other listening comprehension item types at levels 2 through 5 to reflect the fact that in oral language development for children of this age, the understanding and use of various grammatical structures is the central emerging skill. When interpreting the results for listening comprehension, if the student does very well on listening comprehension and poorly on passage comprehension, the teacher might hypothesize that the student has the receptive oral language skills to understand printed material at his or her grade level. If the student does much better on passage comprehension than on listening comprehension, the teacher might want to look for other examples where the student can do better with material he or she sees rather than just hears. Part 2, How to Read the Reports. Now that you understand the purpose of each subtest, we will look at the reports generated from the assessment. Again, this is a brief overview of the reports. A more detailed professional development session will be held to learn how to interpret the results and to address instructional implications. Of the reports you received from this first administration, 5 are useful at this time and are also useful to look at in this order. Number 1, the class progress report. Number 2, the group score summary. Number 3, group diagnostic analysis by type. Number 4, group diagnostic analysis by item. And number 5, individual score summary. The remaining reports you have received will be best utilized after Test 2 when comparisons can be made. If you have access to your reports, we suggest you open these 5 in particular, print them, and refer to them as we continue this portion of the training. You can pause this presentation and begin again once you are ready. The first report we will look at is the class progress report. The class progress report gives us a quick overview and temperature of the class. We begin by noticing the growth scale values up the left side of the graph. The growth scale value is a score that tracks reading progress over time. It can be used to compare students' reading abilities to a reference group of all the students in a particular grade. Additional description about the growth scale value can be found at the top of the page. Across the bottom of the chart lists each student in the class with a corresponding number. Along the right side of the chart lists each student by number, the date of the assessment, the level and form, and the individual growth scale value. Across the middle of the chart, we see the average mean line with a blue shaded area. This area represents 1 standard deviation above the mean and 1 standard deviation below the mean. The stanines 7, 8, and 9 correlate with the top line. Stanines 4, 5, and 6 correlate with the mean line. And stanines 1, 2, and 3 correlate with the bottom line. As teachers and administrators examine this report, they should place particular attention to students whose scores fell below the middle average line. Moving to the second report, we see the group score summary report. This report lists all students' names down the left side of the report, which are grayed out on this example report. This report shows a class performance on all the different subtests. The subtests, sentence comprehension, passage comprehension, and vocabulary comprise the total test score. The listening comprehension subtest is reported separately from the total test score. Each subtest lists the raw score and corresponding stanine. Please recall that stanines 1, 2, and 3 are below average. Stanines 4, 5, and 6 are average. Stanines 7, 8, and 9 are above average. The total test score also lists the growth scale value for each student. In the bottom right-hand corner, we notice that the average growth scale value, or GSV, for the group is indicated. Our third report is titled Group Diagnostic Analysis by Type. In the top left-hand corner, each subtest is listed. Therefore, each class will have several pages of the group diagnostic analysis by type for each subtest. On the left side are the students' names, raw scores, number possible, and total percent correct on this subtest. Across the middle of the report, we see the class average for each type of question in each subtest. This report breaks down the student performance listed as percent correct for each type of question. Please notice, although the reports list the type by parts of speech, this is not to be confused with eligible content. teachers should not begin focusing all their instruction on the parts of speech and sentence types. During our professional development session, participants will be directed on how to determine the instructional implications from this report. Finally, the individual stay-nine for each student are listed on the right-hand side. The fourth report looks deeper at each subtest with an item analysis. It is titled Group Diagnostic Analysis by Item. Again, this report will have several pages since it is separated by each subtest, identified in the top left-hand corner. On the side, we notice the student names and raw scores. Going across this first chart, we see individual students' responses listed for each item. The correct response for each question is found below in the third chart with the descriptor correct answer. Going back to the second chart, we notice the total number of correct and incorrect response by item. Each item is coded to identify the question format. Please refer to the key at the bottom of the report. Our final report is the individual score summary. The box in the top left-hand corner shows a student's performance on each subtest, raw score or composite score with corresponding stay-nine. The stay-nines listed in the box are also represented in the bottom right-hand graph. On the left-hand side, the diagnostic analysis summary breaks down the student's performance in each subtest for the specific skills tested. These results are further described in the box, Description of Results. This brief personalized narrative will explain the student's strength and/or weakness for each subtest. We hope that this presentation has provided you with an understanding of the grade assessment and a grasp of how to read the reports. Please remember that a professional development opportunity will be provided Friday, October 26th from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. for administrators and teachers to receive a more in-depth training that will cover reading, interpreting, and using the results. Should you have any questions prior to this training, please contact your KTO literacy specialist. Thank you.